Welcome. It's like red and pink day today. I'm all
Not
fired.
by not by Tanya was like, "Oh, it's red and pink day," or you said, "Oh, you're in your red shirt." I'm like, "It's Jason's." And I'm totally cold and I don't have long sleeve. What are they called? Shirts, sweatshirts much anymore. So I'm like, I'm cold.
What's a girl to do? And I'm cold too. I actually have full length leggings on today, and it's only been a little over a week since Thailand, and I'm already freezing. I'm ready to go back to sunshine and palm trees and like rain's okay, but not cold and rain together. No.
I feel you. People think like, depending on, I don't know how many, I think there's like Maui has 8 out of the 9 ecosystems. I don't know. And we're in a rainy one. So it's rainy and it's cold.
Yeah.
72, but still.
I was like, California is having an identity crisis right now. It thinks it's Oregon or Washington. By the way, it's been raining and hailing. I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, welcome, all of you beautiful people. Like, thanks for coming and hanging out with me and Erin. We want to talk today about empowerment. Empowerment and our ability to say yes or no from a place of empowerment. So, first thing I want to do, guys, if you haven't heard us already, you know that we always start the beginning of our podcast out with essentially a call to presence. Like, be here, be here with us right now. If you're taking the time and some of your energy to spend with us in your ear, like, come hang out with us fully. Be present with yourself fully right now. So just let's all take a breath together and notice, hey, guess what? If you weren't breathing, you wouldn't be here. So let's just take a moment to appreciate and have gratitude for something as simple as the fact that we are breathing. Mm. You can even take and put your hand on your heart. Oh, I've got a heart that's beating too. There are two things that I can say about every single solitary person that is listening to us right now. You're breathing and your heart's beating. Doesn't matter what state that you're in, you're breathing and your heart is beating. You woke up today. And even if you woke up and think that your life is a total and complete shit show, you're still here. So why not make the best of it? I have so much gratitude for being with you here right now. We're coming up on Christmas. I'm not even thinking about like what I'm like, I know all the peoples will be like, it's Christmas, I'm not working, or I'm not doing this, or I have to do that.
It's
Just
fascinating because, I love Instagram. I
yeah,
use it for all the travel porn. I use it for all of the food porn, all of the like goals and like what my life, will continue to grow and to look like. And then you get the little blips of like, oh, it's so busy. Oh, we're so sick. Oh, it's like, am I living in the same universe these people are? Because that is not
no.
how I feel in my life.
No,
And
love, you are not.
I'm so grateful that Grayson gets to experience that as well, in the sense of like, I mean, she literally had to tell me like how many days was for Christmas. She has her little Amazon wish list, and she's like, Mom, you got to order tonight because I won't get it before Christmas. And
And
just the,
and you responded with,
hey,
every
you,
day is Christmas in your life, girl.
yes, yeah, yeah. And also just yes, we can enjoy all of the festivities and all of the things. And also like you just said, every day is Christmas. What are we rushing for? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are we
Different
appreciating?
realities.
How are we appreciating what's happening right now?
Yeah.
Because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Today is the only thing that we have. It is the present, literally. All the presents under the tree is the presents. Presents and present, same thing.
Yep.
So,
So,
since we got back from Thailand and I got back from Japan, so for our listeners, just a quick little backstory if this is your first episode you're listening to. I spent about 3.5 weeks in Japan with my daughter who had broken her arm and needed assistance. And then afterwards, I went and joined Erin in Thailand. She had already been in Thailand for about 2 weeks, and I got to join her for the last 2 weeks together. And we have now both since come home to our families. I have left my daughter in Japan, where she's a grown, functioning, full adult, and but she's still my baby. And Erin has come back to her daughter Grayson, and there was a little bit of chaos going on before you got home with school.
mhm.
And so, what we're going to talk about today is the empowered know how we're having our kids' backs because Erin and I both experienced growing up a childhood where we were sort of thrust into being adults way sooner than what we were prepared to be. We are now recapturing our childhood. And so
Yeah.
part of that is this sort of simultaneous layered experience of being parents to our children, and aaron's Aaron's daughter is still young enough that she has
Mhm.
some influence. Mine is grown and out of the house and living her adult life in an entirely different country, but I still have some influence. We're reparenting our own inner childs as well as kind of parenting each other, helping each other. And one of the things that I love about Erin is it's like getting to have my mom all over again.
Mhm.
She's not always my mama, but when she is, it's one of the most amazing things that I get to witness. I've seen you change so much in the few years that we've known each
Mhm.
other
Mhm.
and how you parent. So, would you like to share with our listeners what has shifted for you and how you parent your daughter, let's just say in the last year or two?
I think it's kind of what you've already said and summed up in regards to I was parented. I think a lot of us were, right? I'm 42. A lot of us were parented of like, I'm the parent, you're the kid, listen to me, do as I say, not as I do. These are the rules, you're going to conform, all of the things. And I wanted to, it's like we talk about, the law of polarity, the law of contrast. It's like we have to have that sometimes to then figure out what we don't want, right? So I kind of had a constrictive, controlling parent childhood, and I didn't want that for my child. And so I've wanted her to be empowered. I've wanted her to express who she truly is. And I've wanted to cultivate that, right? And I am not perfect. I fuck up a lot at it. And my intention is still to continue to, keep going down that path, right?
Yeah.
So having a child, a lot of people talk about like having a strong-willed child. It's like I think all of our children, all of us are strong-willed, right? Until we get the strong-willed beat out of us, metaphorically speaking
Homogenized.
or physically speaking, right? Like
Yeah.
we all have desires. We all come to this planet with desires and who we truly are. And then it gets talked out of us, convinced out of us, conformed. I mean, name it, right?
Yeah.
So it has really been important to me that Grayson gets to be who she is from
Mhm.
a loving, respectful. When I say respectful, I don't mean honoring adults. I just mean compassionate, loving energy.
Yeah. On a side note, something that just kind of came through that I wanted to bring up, this paradox, this contrast, like oftentimes we see children. One of the reasons why it's so difficult when we see a child's life end sooner than we think is just or fair. One of the hardest things about that is because when we look at children, we see pure potential. We
Mm-hmm.
see all the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But then what we don't realize, that we are kind of like, not to take this into a dark morbid place, but we then become the reapers. We then become the orchestrators at times unintentionally of starting to kill off their spirit, to kill off their potential. Why? Because it's scary. So for many of us as adults, we have been brought up in this, like, what is safe is to
Yep.
conform. What is
Yep.
safe is to fit in. What is
Yep.
safe is not to speak up. Don't cause a problem. Don't
Yep.
create chaos. Follow the rules. Be good. Do as you're told. Everything that's
I'm like,
expected of
preach.
you.
I'm not a church person, but I'm like, amen. Yes,
Like
this is
all of,
exactly what we do.
yes. And so on one hand, we look at these, like, we're like, why are kids dying? Why does this happen to children? And we get so fired up about it. But what we don't realize is the day-to-day death that's going on for the vast majority of children,
Oh.
that we're not even realizing we are the hand that's delivering that, by crushing their spirit,
Mm.
by telling them no because we're afraid. That our no comes from a place of fear, a place of um
Limitation
uh,
and scarcity.
yeah, absolutely. And so just to speaking for someone, from someone, like, this is my inner little child, my inner little girl speaking up, that's saying, like, I didn't fucking fight this hard to come back from the dead to be squashed again. So this is one of the things that Erin and I play with a lot, is both bringing ourselves back to life in all of the possibility, conformity, homogenization that has happened to us as adults. And it has been probably one of the greatest tools to help us with our children. So, do you want to talk about the experience that Grayson is having at school, and the
Yeah.
letter, and
Yeah. Um, there's Grayson, as we all are, is a very powerful person, human being. And she knows exactly what she wants and exactly what she does not want.
Mhm.
And when she does not want something and someone wants to have her do something, there is where friction is created. And the work that we have, when I say work, I really should, I don't want to say should play, say play, but when I say work, it's like the effort that we are, the love that we are pouring into with Grayson right now is, you can say no from a place of, like, what I stole from Tanya is like a Zen no, right? We're not going to
Mhm.
get there immediately. But right now, what is happening at school is kids are asking her to do something, to play something, to have something, to use something of theirs, whatever it might be, right? And Grayson is a no. And then the kids don't like the no, right? None of us
Mhm.
like being told no. And Grayson takes her frustration from a 2 to a 10 in a hot second, because she's like, dude, I already told you no. Why do I have to tell you no again? And
Mhm.
so one of the things that we are working with Grayson is, you can deliver the no a million times from a place of love and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
and a place of even neutrality, right? Like it's just no.
Yeah.
I know you want to play with this. I don't want to right now. This is what I'm doing. And we're not taught in society, we're not taught in school to honor our no's, people's no's, right?
Yep.
So this delicate dance that I feel like that we're doing with school of Grayson is saying no, and she's being in air quotes for our listeners, unkind, air quotes mean, you guys know that I've had a story of I'm harsh, right?
Yep.
And it has come from a place of, I already told you once, how many times do I need to tell you? It comes from frustration. It comes from anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to still say no from a place of empowerment, love, compassion for ourselves and for the people that we are interacting with.
Yes.
And I am not going to conform with school and make her say yes. And there's this delicate dance that's happening right now. I don't know if school is wanting that, but for sure they're like, well, let's just be friends. It's like, we don't have to be friends with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that I'm a no for, and I love them anyways, right? Or they're a no for me. Like it's not a problem. And so this is the practice. This is how children learn how to live, right? And
to express their authority.
Yes, express their authority. So as I don't know what episode it is, but for the listeners that want to go back and listen to the dress code that happened at the very beginning of school, this was the start of you don't look the way we think you should look. This is what you need to dress like. This is the culmination, like I said, like it wasn't about the dress code and it was about the dress code. And so it's just going to continue, because if you're choosing not to conform, if you're choosing to be outside the box in air quotes, this is our life, right? And it's not a problem, right? And so there's been some emails back and forth. There's been several meetings, and I think was at a point where I was like, okay, Erin needs to say exactly how she feels. And I've never been holding back. But there are things that need to be said when Grayson isn't. Every meeting we've had, Grayson has been there. And I think that there was the email, at least for me, was a time where an adult to an adult, I'm going to say exactly how I feel from a place of love. And basically, the goal isn't to conform our children. The goal is to allow them to express how they are feeling, what they are thinking. And for other people, it's not our job either to make the other people listen to us or hear us. And also that's, kind of where we are, right? Because the no isn't being honored and respected.
Yeah. So I'm going to stir the pot here a little bit for our listeners.
Go for it.
What my guidance just showed me was the bullies, the school shootings, the things that are happening with these kids. How empowered do they feel that they have to take such drastic, fatal measures to feel like they have some sort of power? And I know that I am in no way associating Grayson with that, but what I am associating it with, like, I think about when I was a kid, I had the power beat out of me, essentially. Like, you will conform, you will do what's expected of you, you will like shut your mouth and sit there and just do what you're told.
Yep.
That is so disempowering.
Yes.
So incredibly, like, it takes all of our authority away. And what I would love to see happen is I would love to see a world full of empowered children. And I know you are the same.
Yep.
And these are some of the little things that lead up to the big things when somebody breaks. When somebody is just like, I'm either going to kill myself, I'm going to commit suicide, which I tried to do when I was 13.
Yep.
Because like everything about me was wrong. I couldn't do
Yep.
anything right. I couldn't fit in. I couldn't get anybody to love me. So I tried to commit suicide 3 times when I was in my 13 year.
Yeah.
I felt very disempowered. It can also go the other direction
Yeah.
where
It's
people
either
are
inward
wanting.
or outward, right? I mean, you're
Yes.
probably more of the inward. You take it inward and I take it outward. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because bullying has been something that's been talked about. I don't think they've said Grayson's a bully. I don't think that. It's just like bullying is a big buzzword right now, right?
Hmm.
I was not treated so kindly when I was in the 5th grade. And maybe you might look at it now and be like, well, you were bullied. And maybe that's true, right? But both sides are coming from a disempowered place. When
Absolutely.
this is what I tell Grayson, when children act out, when they are frustrated, let's just use Grayson, for example, if she's acting out, if she is saying, you know, there's 2 things here. If she's saying no and she's getting frustrated and her tone of voice is changing, she is feeling disempowered because her no isn't being honored. There's also the children that, people look at or that are in the class that are acting out and like, you air quotes with class clowns and,
Hmm.
being air quotes disruptive and all of these things. That's also coming from a place of disempowered as well, because if they are being seen at home, if they are being heard at home,
Yep.
then they don't have to act out in class, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like we've developed these terms in a way to try to help, but we still have both sides still feel disempowered.
Yep.
And this is also what I told school is we're focusing on what we don't want so much that the law of attraction, the way that the universe works is we get more of what we focus on. So do
Yep.
we want to continue to focus on this? Yes, we need
Hmm.
to address it, right? But
You
no
have to
one's
know
sitting
where
over here.
you are in order to have the coordinates to know where you want to go.
This is
But
true.
beyond that, like, well, I'm still fucking in California. I'm still in
Yeah.
California. Damn it, I'm still in California. Hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Or us choosing to focus on where are the, when I say positive, this feels like judging, but like, the positive attributes of all of the children in the class.
Hmm.
They all are valuable. They all have wonderful things to bring to the table to bring. And we keep circling back and talking about the same thing. And, what I started with is when Tanya was like, well, what do you want to talk about today? I'm like, I want to talk about having our children's backs.
Hmm.
And that is something that I think is important to not only physically do as a parent, but physically say to our children. Like if I look back, my mom would say to me now, oh, of course I loved you, but she didn't tell me that very often, right? It's important that we say these things to our children. I support you 100%.
Hmm.
I have your back 100%. And also the clarification of that doesn't mean, hey, you get to act like an asshole to everybody, but it just means that, you know what, I'm on your team. And that is what I told school. Like I'm on team Grayson and team kids,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah. And for our listeners, um, what I bring to the table, I think, is the fact that it's never too late.
Yep.
There are going to be people that are listening that are like, well, my kids are already raised and gone.
Yep.
I can't, like, my daughter's going to be 27 here pretty quickly. At her age, I was pregnant and having her. Um, it's never too late to change who you are and to change what your story has been. Because here's the other thing that when you were saying that, I was thinking, I know there are probably a lot of parents out there that are like, but how? But
Mhm.
how do I do that? Like my kids won't talk to me now. So how I like I can't change that. And what I want all of you to hear right now is that isn't true. just because we haven't known how to be that parent, we haven't known how to be loving or to speak up or to say things or to be empowering, doesn't mean we can't learn. And learning now is just as valuable, and sometimes maybe even more valuable, to come back from this space, because until it's over, until you find yourself not waking up some morning, anything is possible. Those possibilities in our children don't go away. I just spent 4 weeks with my daughter in Japan, getting to parent her and also be a child with her in some aspects in an entirely different way. And it's probably a whole nother podcast to go into how we can change the predictable future. Like, we just keep doing the same things, we're going to get the same result. We can change the predictable future by changing who we are right now in the present, and that is releasing the stories of our past.
Mhm.
So, if Erin chose to just keep identifying as she's harsh, um, she's, well, that would be the biggest thing that comes up, right? Like,
Yeah, that's
she's
always the thing.
the
Harsh.
authoritarian, the person who's telling you what you should or shouldn't do, right? To what I've seen you evolve into, which is just the softness, the I think what a lot of parents, men and women, are afraid of is their softness, their lovingness, their compassion is going to make them weak. But this is such such a misguided belief, because it is in that softness, that compassion, that we actually find our strength.
Mhm.
As I have watched you as a parent soften with your daughter, it has been like I'm seeing this power come out of you that I get excited about it. And that's not to say that you don't have your moments like where you were this weekend.
Oh, I still lost my shit a little bit because it was just this. I was trying to have a conversation with her, and, obviously, children's brains aren't as developed, as ours adult brains are. And I was knowing that I was seeing she was offline, right? I was seeing that she was more in the emotional or the limbic. And I was telling her these things, and she was just wanting to argue or, go
I
back and
fight
forth.
you. I
Yes,
fight you.
yes. And then she would come back online and she'd be like, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation. And then we would start again. And then she would just go back into this like
Trigger.
loop, this loop. And yeah, sometimes I describe it's like, sometimes, like the crazy girlfriend that you're just like, you're not even making sense. This is what I felt like. I was just like, what is happening right now? Like, we're going around in circles, nothing. So
This is what happens with so many of us, because essentially, like, if I could just flip it a little micro here, um, we talk about flipping our lids, and it's when our prefrontal cortex, that rational part, or that small 5% of our brain that is reasonable, that you can talk to, goes offline. We get into the limbic, the emotional part of our brain, or worse yet, we get, not worse, but, or we get into the amygdala, we get into the brainstem, we get into that pure survival state. And this is oftentimes the hamster wheel that most of us spin in. Triggered, and we're just talking in circles, talking in circles. So that was your experience this weekend. And
yeah,
where
so we
did it?
talked in circles, and finally, I mean, it wasn't, one of the things that I'm learning, like I am, and this is the thing with all of us, depending on the circumstance, we're more aware of how we are behaving and what we are doing in the moment or even before, right? And
Mhm.
there are different relationships that I have that I'm very aware, and I pause before I speak. And I change the whole trajectory of the conversation. My child, I'm not there yet. Okay. And so in the moment, I'm seeing what's happening. It's like a bad car accident, train wreck, right?
Ah!
And I just clapped my hands and I'm like, I'm done. What I could have done was, Grayson, I'm no longer having a conversation. Like my lid was a little flipped too. And I could have walked away and said, listen, I'm going in my room. I need a moment. I'm not going to continue this conversation right now. I did not do that.
That was such an empowered pattern interrupt, though. The clapping of your hands and saying, I'm not having this conversation anymore, was the interrupt of the old pattern, which was just going to just keep that fight
Keep going
going, right? Because you were both in
in
survival
crazy
terms,
town.
you were both in anger, you
Yes.
were both in fight, right? which
Yes.
is
Yes.
which is a huge progression from resistance and shutdown, but you were
Yes.
both in fight.
Yes.
Continue. So
Um, Also, I have wounding from being yelled at when I was a
mhm.
kid. So when she starts yelling at me, when she starts, it feels like little Erin, it feels like she's just coming at me. And so then I pulled the mom card and I was like, you continue to talk to me like this, you're not going to Silk's performance and you're not going to your play. Like, I'm not having this conversation. It was almost like the baiting, right? And I, as the adult and the more aware, I'm learning like, okay, next time I'd be like, no conversation right now. And that's just something that after the fact, the repair, right? Like mom fucked up. I'm not perfect. I'm learning how to have these conversations, just like you're learning to have conversations with your friends too, right?
Mhm.
And showing her that too. Like, I think sometimes as parents, we think, well, we fucked it up. It's too late, whatever age they're at, right? We can always say, listen, I'm sorry for the way that I reacted. That isn't in my best self, right? And I'm a human and I'm trying to figure it out too.
And for those of us with 50-plus-year-old brains, um, it is so much harder even just to realize or recognize that we fucked something up. Like we can't even see that. Like speaking for older parent Tanya, like in my late 40s, I couldn't conceive that I had done anything wrong or that I had not parented from a place of like, obviously my intention was always I love my child and I want to do what's best for her.
Yeah.
But the idea that I could have done something better or different, or the idea that I had done something wrong, not even something I could receive, because to be wrong is to be uncertain. To be wrong is to not know how to fix something, because like that is a survival mechanism. We have to know, we have to have figured all of this shit out, which is a total farce, a total illusion
Yeah.
that we know how to be amazing parents. Very few of us have had perfect, whatever that is, parents to model for us how to do recovery, how to do repair, how to say, you know what, I didn't like the way that turned out. Do you want to play with me to try and to figure out a different way to do this? And this is one of the things I admire about you so much. First of all, you have a manifest generator kid, which is like parenting Jekyll and Hyde. I'm just going to say
A baby fire dragon.
it
That's what I feel
is.
like sometimes. I really do.
You're like Khaleesi, the mother of dragons, but instead of like burning down the whole village. Oh, spoiler alert. Those of you that watch Game of Thrones, like la 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 la, not listening. Like you watching you, you're like the Khaleesi that we all wished she had become instead of what she did. She was the mother of dragons. She had 3 baby dragons, which you do
My
as well.
husband, my business partner, best friend, and my daughter keep going.
And she wanted to empower the people. She wanted to
Yeah.
free the slaves. But then she had so many things coming at her and so many people trying to tear her down that she kind of flipped. She flipped her shit and she rode one of her dragons and she fucking burned like entire like villages and things like that. So one of my greatest pleasures is watching you be a mother of dragons and not like, yeah, you might have some
I'm
moments
glad
where
you're
you're
eating the
like,
popcorn. But I do want to say this because you just said, you know what? I didn't even know there was a possibility. And where Erin used to go is to this shame and guilt spiral, like the intense shame that I used to feel because my contrast for me, I felt like was so much is like I'm totally repeating, right, my childhood. I'm fucking my kid up. I'm a terrible mother. Like I used to spin in that shame for so long. So for you parents out there that are air quotes yellers, right? That lose your shit, that like come unglued. I see you. Me too. I know like it's not perfect. It's and I think more than anything is like, are we willing to have the repair? Are we willing to say, listen, like I just said, you know, like mom messes it up a lot, right? And I'm trying and I'm actively nobody. And here's the thing, I don't have anybody to model, right? Like I don't have, like you were just talking about, we don't have this model for us that's like, this is how we were parented. I'm literally not recreating, I am creating an entirely different childhood for you
you're
than I
remodeling.
remodeling, thank you, than I ever had. I don't have a manual. I don't have a, you know, oh, when Grayson does this, you do this. I don't have that. And the way that we learn is by actually fucking shit up, you know? And when I say fucking shit up, I don't have any weight to that. I just mean like we mess it up, right? Like we do it, we learn from it, we figure it out, we tweak it, we keep moving forward. And just, you know, telling her those things, telling her like, look, this is me messing up. This is me doing life messy. This is me wanting the best intentions and I don't have the answers. And I'm, you know, I'm learning too. And
Yeah.
I think our children, you know, when we go back to like having our own back, having our children's backs, like that's also important to say because I think there were a lot of times with my parents, it was like they were always right and I was always wrong. And, you know, we've talked about in previous podcasts that right and wrong is just judgment, but it's important for me to say to my child, like, I messed things up. That was a bad call for mom or, you know, whatever it might be. And to say that my intention is always like loving you, honoring you, and I'm working on it.
Yeah. Watching you blossom and grow. And I want to say for all of the parents out there that have like not said something, that have kept everything inside and then had those moments where they completely implode.
Yep.
Me too, right? I part of my realization while in Japan, I don't think I've shared this yet. And I might be repeating myself, which is always good because that's how we learn. We have to repeat
Mm-hmm.
things over and over. When I was in Japan, my daughter's frustration, her anger at the situation was palpable. She didn't necessarily want me there. Um, we always had what I valued as a good relationship, and I did not realize how much I had resisted, pushed her away to some degree because when she moved to Japan, there was a big part of me that just felt relieved. Just absolutely felt relieved because I felt like I was never good enough. I could never fix things for her. It was never my job to fix
Yep.
things for her. Um, and one of the awarenesses that I had while I was in Japan was twofold. One, there is no doing it perfect. In fact, the perfection is in the messiness of it.
Yep.
And two, that we are always learning and it's never too late. And I know I said this earlier about it not being too late. Here's the awareness that brought that about. Dominique was extremely frustrated about me coming. And she kept saying, I wanted your first trip to Japan to be different because her dad and I had been talking about going in the spring. She'd been wanting us to visit. And she kept going on about, I didn't want this to be what your first experience was like. And I'm like, this is so perfect. I can't even describe to you.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much our relationship needed this. And what came into my awareness was that um, being with her allowed me to see all the things that I thought I'd fucked up actually made her a stronger human. And we want to give our kids the experience that we didn't have as children. So my mom was always like, you keep your mouth shut, you don't cause a scene, you don't speak up, you're not seen, you're not heard. So everything in my life has been this like, oh no, no, I'm blowing it up. I'm telling everybody everything. I'm being transparent until that got me hurt a number of times.
Yeah.
Or it got the people around me really mad. Like, why
Upset.
are you telling my secrets? Why are you? And it's like, as I saw it, I was not telling people secrets. I
Yeah.
30 years of doing
Sharing.
nails,
Yeah.
and
Sharing.
I like I was a vault. That was one of the things that my clients prided, like loved about me. They could tell me anything. Um, and I had shared something about my daughter with a very deep friend who was going through an excruciating experience herself. And my daughter was still enraged at me about having spoken up and having said
Years
something.
ago.
Yes,
Years ago that you had said this and she was still holding on to it.
yes.
Yep.
So being there allowed me to see like all the ways in which she had like become a little bit like my mom in that I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be heard. And yet we're creative people. We're like every single one of us, every human being on this planet is a creative person.
Yep.
And I see where she's stifled her ability to speak up or to be seen. And just realizing the perfection of all of it. And what I got to share with her was like, we try to give people the experience that we did not have. And the intention that is at the core, the base of it all is we want our children to be empowered and we want them to know that they are lovable and worthy. And if we have been lacking in any of those ways, that's going to show up for us big. That's
Yep.
always going to be there, whether they're grown up or not. And it's never too late to start speaking up, to learn how to speak out, to learn how to breathe that fire without burning down an entire village, right? So I just wanted to connect to those parents that haven't said something and to think that like there's nothing left I can do. Part of it is just starting to ask yourself, like, who would I be if I felt like I could speak up? And just like we were talking about with the no, we're not going to go from a no
Yep.
out of anger, a no out of resistance, a no out of freeze to being a neutral no or a
Yep.
zen no in
Yep.
one step. Like it is
Yep.
a progression.
Yep.
I used to say no out of essentially being frozen. No, no, I just, no. Resistance. No, I don't want that. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to experience that. No, just no to everything. I would rather shut myself down. To no because I'm angry. You're not listening to me. What good is it? Why do I even bother to say no? Nobody's ever going to listen to me. And the reason this is so important, and this is kind of bringing us back to where we started, there was something that you brought up in um, the correspondence that you had with the school. So not only is it where we get to say no and have our no heard and honored, even if we have to say it a gazillion times, but it's also,
Mhm.
how do we receive no? How are we telling our kids no? What ways in which are we telling them no? You had mentioned something about
I'm like, say it, because I'm like, what part? Because it was a long email. Tell me what you're referring to, because I also want to talk about something else about peer pressure.
what she had been told no in the classroom when she asked
Oh,
her.
no, that you can't go to the restroom.
Yeah.
Grayson's told me that on numerous occasions. So that's like, that makes this mom really hot. Um,
Tell us
because
why.
because we coach plenty of people that we bring them back into their bodies. We bring them back into empowerment. We bring them back into honoring themselves first and foremost. How many times have we been on different coaching calls and they're like, can I go get my dog? Can I go pee? And we're like, yes,
Yes.
always you, number one. Do not ask us, right? There is no authority except you. And so she had been told multiple times, which I'm sure it's coming from, hey, sometimes the girls want to go and they want to talk in the bathroom because they kind of figured out how to, like, one of them could go and then another one could go a little bit later, or whatever it might be. Okay. And also, when we tell the children they cannot get up and honor themselves and do what they need to do, whether that be go to the restroom or that be, I need to move my body, like even Erin, and this is also something, for manifesting generators, for generators, tell me if I'm leaving any other kind of tendencies or types out. Like, we physically need to move. We cannot sit for extended periods of time. And we're basically shutting that authority, that knowing down in us, in our bodies. And then we're
Hmm.
expecting our children to be like, and no, please, I don't want you to play with me right now. It's like, we're sending them completely mixed signals.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I said
And
that in the email.
this is where, and this might be leading into what you want to talk about. This is the difference between Erin and Tanya. So Erin, as a teenager, meets with a boy that wants to get hot and sexy with her, and she's like, "I'm a no for you." And then there's Tanya that has been, basically her no was completely destroyed, disempowered, and that all went inward. So I was like, I I might be like, "No, I or I can't say no, right? I
Yeah,
can't say no to
exactly.
men because
Yep.
that's where I'm supposed to be getting all my love from. That's where I'm supposed to be getting my value from. So I don't say no.
Yes.
I say no to other things because I don't get to say no when it comes to a man. I don't get to say no when it comes to a doctor because
Yep.
they all have something I need that I can't live without. Doctor, it's their wisdom, their medicine. A man, it's his love and support. So my no was in that frozen place most of the time, and your
And
no was in
my
that.
no is where Grayson's is, right? My no is in anger. My no is in frustration. And this is, something that we were talking about with a coach that we're working with right now of, she's like, no's, and I know this, right? But it's good for Jason to hear this. It's like, no's are empowering. No's are where we get, when we get to say no. And there's two times when Karen Curry Parker talks about this. She talks about no's when children as toddlers are learning their empowerment. When you always hear the no, right? They're learning that they are separate from their parents. That's healthy, right?
Mhm.
And then
As
also,
teenagers
and
too.
then that's the other one, right? That's where Grayson's, she's 10, but she's getting into that teenage years of like no and empowered there too, where we are getting to see like, listen, have our own ideas, our own beliefs. We're separate from our parents. We're separate from society. And when I don't mean separate as in not together. I just mean like we have our own identities, right?
Yeah.
And so the coach was telling us yesterday that like no's are really healthy. No's are what you want your kid to be saying no to drinking, no to doing drugs, no to having sex with somebody they don't want to really be having sex with, or kissing, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And we're sending these sweet, precious children souls mixed messages. You can't say no for this, but, oh, well, why are you drinking and doing drugs? Silence on purpose on the podcast, intentional, it's like, because they're not able anymore to check in with themselves, and they are the authority. And so that has always been, and also what Grayson is experiencing is there's other children that she's helping empower, right? So there are other children that she's, air quotes, standing up for and helping them have a voice. And that's also being met with a little bit of resistance, because she's coming out as what they term as harsh, which is, literally, I think my child sometimes, obviously she is me, right? Like, I was always the one that stood up for people. I was always the one that was like, well, if they can't say no, I'm going to say no for them, because that's really what they don't want. Or, and we use that against them. So here we go back to having our children's backs, getting curious, asking lots of questions. Tell me, honey, why did you respond in that way? What were you feeling? Because the emotions are typically what precede the action, right? So if we can figure out what are we feeling that caused us to react or act in a certain way, then we can help them modify from obviously an empowered place, right? The action can still be the same, but the emotion that is preceding the action can be different. So instead of saying no in a harsh tone, it can say no, and the harsh tone is coming from anger or frustration. The no can come from neutrality, as in calm, peace. Like, what do we want to choose? What emotion do we want to practice and be practiced in?
And the other thing that you're teaching her with this practice that we use is you're teaching her out how to own her no. Because when you own something, you are able to, like, I am the owner and the generator of this. I can just give it to you. You need it again? Okay, here it is again. And it's not something that's making you angry. It's not something that's making you exasperated or frustrated. It's not something that's draining your energy, because, like, I can say, when I am in alignment with this body and this no feels good, because saying yes right now would not feel good. I'm in touch with this authority, my body. For those of you listening, I'm like, my hands are all over my body right now. When you have the ownership and the authority to know what feels right inside your body, to be able to say yes or no in any given situation, then that is empowerment at its finest, because you are the creator of it. You are empowering it. You are infusing it with your power. To be empowered is the power is coming from within you.
I want to say one other thing of that, one of the tools that Tanya and I do use is what's called human design. And knowing Grayson's human design, her tendencies, has helped me as a parent tremendously, because it's kind of like the Cliff Notes, I don't know, a little cheat sheet, a little, just and I've said this before, I only use it as an empowering thing, right? I never use it as for anything else, right?
Or
no label box. Nope. So I know that based on her tendency, she is a manifesting generator. And what that means from a sense of energy type is she needs to move. So when she's frustrated, we don't need to sit down and have a talk. She needs to go punch her stuffies. She needs to go yell in her pillow. She needs to go maybe run around, or she needs to physically move her human body.
Get on her silks.
Yep. That's goals. We'll have a barn with some silks, because she's been talking a lot about that. I want a barn with silks, but just our children, just like ourselves, when we know how to use that to help us. So, I would encourage parents, if you're open to it, right? That's one of the things that's really helped me of she needs to move her body. And so allowing that energy to physically move through her body almost sometimes is half of the half of the heavy lifting, right? Just
Yep.
getting that energy out of the body that's being stored. So that's something
And
else, or,
sorry, I interrupted you.
no. I was
Total,
just gonna say,
total.
like that's that's just something that as a tool, for the parents that are like, well, how? That's one tool you can use of like learning about and seeing what your children, what kind of energy type they are so that they can, you know,
Yeah.
because a projector is going to want to have all of the conversations, right? The
Yeah,
talking
because that's actually
process.
how they process, is to have
Yes.
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go
Um,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, this is one of the things, first of all, Karen Curry Parker, I think kind of, this sounds a little dramatic, but that's a total manifest generator thing. She saved my life to some degree because when I watched her, she's got a series on parenting your
Healing the inner
manifest.
child. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I listened to her one about manifestors specifically as part of one of my two types, and then the manifesting generator, I felt like somebody actually saw into my soul.
Yep.
And I realized how much disempowered, how much shut down of that energy I had actually, we talk about burnout. I had, for me, it was burn in. Like all of that
Yeah.
fire, all of that rage got directed inward. And I had kidney issues, I had skin issues, I had thyroid issues, like all my power, right?
Yep.
My boundaries, skin, my the fire in our kidneys, our adrenals, the things that usually burn out, mine were burned inward. And so I had a lot of physical conditions that came from that. And um, one of the things that I have been able now to play with is, whenever we're healing that part of ourselves that has either been in shutdown or flight, once we get to anger, anger is a big emotion. Anger feels pretty intense and
Mm-hmm.
fiery and
Mm-hmm.
scary, especially if
Mm-hmm.
we've spent many years feeling frozen or just in deep resistance. And what's on the other side of that fire is peace. What's on the other side of that anger is is an inner peace that I can't even, like, I don't have the words to describe what that feels like. And part of that for me was,
Warm in my body. It just feels
yeah,
like you say peace, and I'm like, yeah, it's just like warm.
yeah, it's like that fire that you get it raging at first, but then when it settles down and it just becomes that sustainable warmth.
Constant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, moving my body was a really important part of moving that energy. Um, I have I have a number of friends that are projectors, that are close friends that I just love dearly. For them, they need more time and place. They need more conversation to sit down and talk about things. And projectors are the teachers of the world in a lot of ways, um, not seen, valued, or recognized. And how they resolve, how they understand things, their energy type definitely is different than my own. And for me, finding that place of being able to actually let things come out, to verbalize, to speak,
Yeah.
a thing that I was chastised for as a little kid. Tanya does well in school, but she talks too much.
Yeah.
Um, was all part of that part of me that was trying to get out. Um, finding movement, finding dance, finding um, being in the water, swimming, doing gymnastics, just all the things, all the ways in which I can move this body has been very, very healing for me. Um, so, yes, I love that we use human design to help people understand what their kids might potentially need, what tendencies they have with their energy. If you're a manifester, um, your energy type might be, you can kind of do things on your own. The generators and manifesting generators are 70% of the world's population, and we need to move. And so, this model that we have kids sitting down, not being able to honor their bodies, not being able to move, we're cutting PE programs, we're expecting them to sit for long periods of time is is fucked up.
Yeah, and I said that in my email too. I didn't say it's fucked up, but I said we're not wired to sit, right? We're not wired
Yeah,
to sit.
yeah,
And, as I think about this, when I say, we have having our kids' backs, what I really mean, I really mean that we have our own back. I really mean that we honor our own family dynamic, our own children, and each child. I only have one, but like my brother is very different than me. He has manifestor tendencies. I have generator tendencies. My sister has manifesting generator tendencies. My mom is a reflector, like we're all different, right? So if you
mhm,
have multiple children, you parent them differently. There is no one size fits all. And so when I say
yes,
having our children's backs, I mean 100% having our children's backs and 100% having our own backs as our
yeah.
parent, as the parent, as the human, as the person that's going through this human experience.
Oh, that
you
just
know
gives me chills.
Me too. It's the love and the compassion for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll leave you guys with that. I love each and every one of you. I'm grateful for that every single week you guys tune in and listen. And
I'm
until
gonna get
next time,
all.
we're crying. I'm not
Yeah.
crying. I am crying. You're crying. I'm crying. Until next time.
Until next time, we love you.